Good morning, everybody, and thanks so much for joining us for the May user group. Thanks so much again for making some time today. Certainly good morning to the US and good afternoon to Europe, and still good morning, I suppose, to parts of Europe. Good to have you with us. Let's jump in and look at extending this discussion around personalization. So this is our fourth user group for the year, and the final one in this series, I suppose, that is specifically looking at personalization. And so our last portion for this session is focusing on the personalization we can achieve on behalf of the sales team, using both signatures, but also looking at some of the sales tools that are available for the sales team. So for those who join us regularly, you'll know that we certainly make recordings available, and we do all of that using Zoom. So you'll be able to access those from our website, our blog. The Q&A is available throughout the session, so please feel free to use the Q&A as we go through this morning. And also use chat. If you feel like you want to ask something without everybody else seeing it, that's fine. Go ahead and use the chat function, and we can help you with that. So my name is Derek Bell. I'm the Director for Customer Success and Marketing at Marketing Cube. And I've got Jason on the line who's helping us this evening. Jason's one of our account directors. So make sure you make him work hard for the money, and certainly shoot some questions through. All right, so on the agenda is welcome and kind of where we are right now. And we'll dive straight into personalization from a CX point of view, and looking at trying to personalize those different communications from broader members of the team. So not just from the brand, so to speak, or maybe from the CEO or some other senior executives, but actually getting quite personal in relation to who the email is from. So from an account owner, whoever owns the relationship of the individual, and we'll talk about how that's defined here in a moment as well in a bit more detail. So from there, we'll move on to the second topic, looking at the sales tools, which are Profiler and Engage. So if you're familiar with those, you may learn something hopefully today. If you're not familiar with those, we'll give you a little bit more detail and show you where you can find some more information. We'll also provide some insight around just our experience of implementing those sales tools. What you've got to keep in mind essentially is that the marketing team within your organization is implementing technology for the sales team. So there's some tricks and tips we've got to help that be as successful as possible. And also just a few updates for you in relation to release 22B, which is actually rolling out at the moment. So we want to make sure we get those details to you. So let's jump in and look at personalizing your CX with comms from broader members of the team. So what we're looking at here essentially is the ability to deliver emails pretty much like the ones that you receive from me for the Eloqua user group each month. And in the background of that slide that's right in front of you right now, you can see what you would see as the Eloqua user, which is the signature placeholder sitting there within the email design editor. So let's jump in and get a bit more information. Okay, so how do we determine who an email is from? That's a really good question. So it will vary from company to company, but generally speaking, with a CRM connected to Eloqua, and look, it's absolutely the easiest way to make it happen. If you don't have a CRM connected, it does require a little bit of manual maintenance, which obviously is a little perilous, but you can still. There are a few ways you can play with it. So we'll have a look at that in a bit more detail, but certainly with a CRM connected, it becomes a lot easier to do that. But essentially what the signature function in Eloqua enables you to do is to send an email on behalf of many people at once in a batch email. So for example, you've got to send out 50,000 emails going to 50,000 unique contacts, but coming from one of your 20 sales directors or sales executives, for example. And so that's easily achieved. And it's easily achieved on a campaign that might only have 25 people in it, coming from 4 salespeople. The size really makes no difference to the scenario. It's just the logic, the underlying rules that will determine the experience and the outcome. essentially, of those campaigns. So the senders are essentially dynamically defined based on the recipients of the message. And so that information sits usually on the Eloqua contact. It can be on a custom object, but it's usually on the Eloqua contact. And it could be something as simple as the email address of the salesperson. We just need something that tells us who within your organization owns the relationship with that particular individual. So rules will link specific sender to a contact based on those values on the contact or on a custom object. So I've got a visual to try and explain this in a bit more detail for you. So we start off with signature rules. And so this is where we'll determine who the email comes from. And there are a few other options that are available to you there, but fundamentally the rule is one part of Eloqua. The other part is the layout. So when we refer to the signature layout, that's the cosmetics. That's all it is. It's cosmetics. It's usually the logo. It pretty much can be a replication of what you do in Outlook or in Gmail, however you send your emails today, as in within the business, not just with Eloqua, but within the business. So whatever that signature looks like, chances are that you're probably going to want to replicate that signature in Eloqua. And of course, that's absolutely fine. You can do whatever you want. You've got HTML available, so you can go crazy, or it can be nice and simple, whichever you need. So you've got options to play with, which is good. So then once you've developed your rule, and you've developed your layout, now it's time to add the layout to the email. So remember, the layout is purely the cosmetics. And look, in most cases, depending on the size of your organization, you may only have one or two different layouts. My experience is most companies will typically want to do a signature layout that potentially has street address details, and another one that really just has maybe cell phone number, email address, web address, and maybe the city. For whatever reason, some like to also include a photograph, potentially, like we do at Marketing Cube. You guys get to see this lovely face every time you get an email from me. You're not going to typically have many layouts. The only reason or place I've seen multiple layouts is within organizations where potentially there are multiple brands that are using the same instance of Eloqua, or potentially some of the education and university type environments where potentially the different faculties may have slightly different looks and feel in relation to their signatures. That's about it, really. So you typically won't have hundreds. So then we need to make sure all of the people from within your organization from whom these emails will be sent are actually loaded in as users. Okay, so the user profile within Eloqua is a place where you put all of the information that you would typically find on a business card. So job title, street address, suburb, city, state, country, all that sort of fun stuff, their email address, obviously. You can also add in things like their LinkedIn URL. You may have some personal message that you may want to include, for instance, some motivational statement or something like that you may want to include as well. So you've got some options there to play around with. But yeah, so they are non-licensed consuming users. So it's just that we use that user profile area of Eloqua to hold all of the information that we need. And it's from there that we merge into the signature layout. You'll see that here in a moment. I'll show you. And then, of course, it all comes together on the campaign canvas. So we, on the campaign, you'll drop in your email and your audience, etc. And within the actual email element step itself on the canvas is where we apply the signature rule. And again, you'll see there are a couple of options that you've got there at the same time. Some suggested steps that we would encourage you to think about when it comes to rolling out the process within your different organizations. So first one is determine who in the organization actually needs to be added to Eloqua as what is referred to as a disabled or non-licensed consuming user. It's not really the best term in the world, but that's what it's called. So they're a non-licensed consuming user. So in other words, it doesn't cost anything for you to have that, those users sitting in Eloqua. Now, what you will need to do then is make sure you gather all of the right information. Okay, so all of the right information that you need to have in the signatures. Now, the general suggestion is that you would, in fact, want to make sure that you have consistency. So if you've got, so let's say you've got 85 salespeople, you'll create a layout. And in that layout, you'll have first name, last name, job title, cell phone number, and perhaps the office address, for example. But if you have one or two precious individuals that don't want their cell phone number being used, which I'm not sure why they're in sales if they don't want that used, then that can become a little bit of a challenge, and it just looks a bit odd. You'll see here in a moment. Now, I just want to quickly refer, we've got a question here. Question here relates to having some difficulties uploading. We're going to go into that area of Eloqua here shortly. And I have to say that I've not had any issues uploading it. I'm often doing it on behalf of clients quite often. Yeah, and for us, we're a smaller organization, so if I need to, I just add it manually because it's usually only one. But for customers, it's usually sales teams that we're uploading. So let's have a quick look at that and see if we can potentially overcome any barriers there. And so that's it, the upload process that Shelley, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, has indicated having some challenges with. So we'll have a look at that. So once you get all the user data in, again, consistency is key. You want typically to try and have the same data for everybody across all those different values. Then we create the layout and we create the signature rule. So that's kind of the steps that you want to follow, essentially. All right, so layouts are found within the asset menu. So from assets, we go to components, and then from components, we go down to signature layout. So layout. So here, what you can see in the layout area, and you'll notice that you'll get here a signature rule. You may or may not have noticed at that point, when you go to components, you can't see signature rule. I honestly don't know why it's not there in the menu. But if you go to layout, obviously you'll see it right here as well. But let's focus on layout for the moment. Now, there's no folder structure available with signature layouts. I think the logic there from Oracle's point of view is that no one's going to have hundreds of layouts, which is a fair call. We have a few. Look, probably because of some joint campaigns. So some of these folks you can see here from Oracle. So we do obviously a few joint campaigns with the Oracle team. These are our current ones that we have up the top here. So we just make it really clear the ones we don't want to use. Let me show you the one that we use most of the time. And one thing to think about is the font size of your signature. Nothing looks more awkward than if your emails are a standard 14, 12, or 16 point, or whatever they might be, and then your signature is a different font size. It just kind of looks a bit like amateur hour. So have a think about that when you're laying them out and designing them. So 16 point is pretty standard for us. And so what you're looking at here essentially is a whole bunch of field merges. And what is it merging from? That's the great question. So that's where we'll open another window here to show you the other side of the coin. So if you've got administration access within your instance of Eloqua, you'll be able to go to the user area of Eloqua. So I'm going to pick on my profile. And because these fields that you see here are not typical field mergers that merge from a contact that you're so used to when you're building emails and landing pages and forms, etc. They're coming from here, from the user profile, and specifically right here. So you've got to actually expand this out, and here you'll see all of this information. So all of these fields that you see here are available here. And so that's essentially exactly the same number of fields right here. So you will notice you've got the ability to add in a picture. So that picture just sits within your standard component library within Eloqua. And obviously what you do want is consistency. So we've elected, I think, for all of our images, I think they're all, now I'm going to be guessing, I want to say 150 by 150 pixels. I can't quite remember. Yeah, 150 by 150 pixels. They're all exactly the same dimensions, etc. And they're just sitting in the component library. For those of you that have been using Eloqua long enough, you might remember this is the old sort of Eloqua 9 interface. So this one's still a bit fuzzy. Works exactly the same. And so, yeah, you just upload those, associate them, and then obviously personalize all of this information. Now, all of this can be uploaded. Now, I'll always encourage you to upload URLs for your website in full, including your HTTPS, because what I tend to prefer to do is utilize this field merge, which is to click here to visit our website. You'll see this yourself. If you look at any of your emails from the user group from me, you'll see that function there. So instead of just a URL, I'd make it more of a call to action. I suppose. And so in order to do that, we just want to make sure we have the full URL. Okay, so that's where we're merging from, and that's how we create them. So let me just quickly go to a blank one, click on new, and just show you how that works. So you typically always want to think about some sort of a sign-off to include. And then it's just, you're very familiar. This is just exactly the same, if I can type correctly. So first name, make sure we put a space in, last name, and then we do a return. And here you may want to do job title. I mean, this is all purely cosmetic, so it's whatever you feel you need to do, right? So I'm going to highlight all of that. Helvetica is our standard. The email editor itself will override it anyway, so it's not a big deal. So that's, and let's just make sure I get my font size, which I want to be 16, and there you go. So it's really, it's as simple as that. If you want to put in the photograph like we did and kind of align it so the photograph is on the left and the copy of the actual signature is on the right, then that does require a little bit of HTML. Not a great deal, but if you've got somebody in the firm who can help you with that, it's just a little bit of HTML magic. You can see it's not a huge snippet, but it just enables that to display correctly and do that for you. It's a bit hard to do that within this interface at the moment. So that's it. That's how you build out the layout, and you can build as many of those as you want or need to within your organization. Okay, so let's have a closer look now at rules. So rules are rules, okay? And it's the rules that are the intelligence that determine who gets to see which signature within the body of the email. And so I want to be really clear. So I've just popped this screenshot in here of this is actually just Apple Mail, but the from. So specifically, this is what we're trying to control. Instead of this being your brand name, for instance, I Go Direct Group, in fact, it's going to be the name of the person. So in this case, it would be Jason O'Donnell. So we want to have that level of control. The nice thing about the rule, though, is it does give you some flexibility. So if we think about sending out an email from multiple salespeople, then that's exactly what you want, is the salesperson's name. If the person opens that email and hits reply, then the reply goes back directly to the salesperson. But if you're sending out an email maybe from the CEO, you probably don't necessarily want all of your customers and whomever you're emailing to all be able to simply hit reply and everybody's emailing the CEO. So you do have control over that process. And that's what these little options are here at the bottom, which I'll show you here in just a second. But the fundamental aspect of the rules that you need to create for your signature rule is to set a key field that defines the email sender. Okay. And now, for most of you, that may well be the field on the Eloqua contact, which is in fact a system field. So everybody has this field when they buy Eloqua for the first time. It's there, called salesperson. It's a really good one to use as well, because by default, that particular field is used in quite a few insight reports as well. So it means you don't have to create custom reports, because that system field is already sitting in a lot of custom reports. Now that field is designed typically to contain a first name, space, last name. That's the intention. It can contain whatever you want it to, obviously, but that's kind of the intention of it. So what we've done at Marketing Cube, we use the salesperson because it enables us to have a unique value in there. And the unique value is what you're seeing over here on the right-hand side. So Adrian Jones, Jason O'Donnell, Marika Timmers. Now, we're a small organization, and so we don't have two Jason O'Donnells, we don't have two Adrian Joneses, etc. But in larger organizations, of course, there's always a risk that you may have two people with the same name. And data 101, right? That's an absolute nightmare. So what's better than using their first name, last name as the key field? What's better is to use the email address. So again, a contact field. What we've done at Marketing Cube is we've actually created another field called salesperson email address, which I'll show you here in just a moment. But again, to give you, or just to emphasize, you do have control here where you can control what the reply to email address is, the reply to display name, the sender display name, and the sender display address. So the sender display name may well be the name of your CEO, but the sender display address could in fact be inquiries at yourdomain.com.au, that sort of thing. So you've got quite a level of granularity that you can control. And so what you would need to do is create a rule for each of those scenarios that you wanted to follow. And any one rule can be applied to one email send at any one time. You can't have a single email send with multiple rules assigned to it. So here, just to show you what that looks like. So that's the key field that we're using today at Marketing Cube. But I generally find with most of our clients, we typically will create for them two custom fields, one being salesperson mobile. That can come in quite handy, more so from a personalization point of view than from anything else. But the salesperson email address is generally the one we would encourage clients to use as the key field because it's already a unique value. So something for you to think about. The reason for salesperson mobile is in the context of writing emails that the engaged user might be using, or even if we're doing other types of campaigns, I like to be able to put into the body of the email, for instance, dear Jenny or James, blah, 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 blah. If any of these points are of interest, please feel free to call me directly on, and I can use a field merge to put their mobile or their cell number directly into the body of the email. Now, of course, I know it's going to be in the signature. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. But I like to think of it from the point of view that if I'm writing an email to somebody, yes, my signature's there, but I typically would just write my mobile or my cell number in there anyway. Plus, how convenient it is on a mobile device. Obviously, if you've got the mobile there, most operating systems or mobile operating systems will enable you just to tap directly on it. And it's a little bit bigger usually than the signature, all those sort of variables. So it's more of a personal thing than anything else, but I like to do it. I think it just makes it a little bit more personal. All right, let's have a look at creating some rules and look at the various options that we've got to play with there. All right, so back here again in our component library, we're going to jump down to signature rules. And again, you'll see there are different rules that we do and don't use. But fundamentally for us, the rule we use most of the time is this one called Marketing Cube Sales Team with Marika. And let me explain to you why it's with Marika. You saw before Marika is clearly a member of the sales team. So why would it be specifically with Marika? Well, I'll explain here in just a moment. All righty, so we give it a name and we need to always identify a default sender. So that list is the list of users, both enabled and disabled users. So we must always have a default just in case that we have a contact that has another owner on it besides these three, in which case in our world, the CEO is the default. Then set the key field that defines the email sender. So that's the one we just talked about. So you can see here that you've got the ability to select a contact record or contact field, also a custom object field. And if you're using any of the event registration functions within Eloqua, that's also another option for you to play with there. So you can see here that when we talked about layouts, it's highly likely you might have 2 or 3, maybe a few more layouts, but you can see the signature rules, you could actually have quite a few because it could depend on the complexity of the particular campaign you're doing. It could be quite a bespoke one. There could be a whole range of variables at play there. So it's likely that you'll have multiple rules. So this is, again, just to emphasize here, so you can pick and choose what you want to do here and how that works and how that functions. But why did I have this one called with Marika? Okay, so this rule was always called MC Sales Team, and it included Adrian, Jason, and Marika. Marika went away on maternity leave, had a beautiful little baby boy, gorgeous little fella. She's now back with us. But while she was gone, I was thinking to myself, oh, hang on a minute. Actually, I thought about it before she left, which was even better. I thought, well, hang on a minute. I've got this rule set up and we have all these contacts in the CRM platform with Marika as the account owner. So all my automated campaigns are going to go out with emails from Marika. Okay, it clearly isn't going to work. She's on maternity leave and she's not checking her emails. So what can I do? Okay, so the easiest solution was let's just leave the CRM as it is. We didn't need to change account owners. The plan was always for Marika to come back. So that was no problem from that point of view. We just leave that. So all I did was come in here to the signature rule, and I actually simply remove Marika using the trash icon. So now I'm left with just Adrian and Jason. So what that meant was when a campaign went out the door, and if it had Marika as the salesperson or the account owner or contact owner in this case, then Adrian would have been replaced in that one. Sorry, Adrian would have replaced Marika in those. So then when Marika came back full-time, came back to work, then all I did was come into the signature rule and just simply restore Marika to that particular process. And that was it. So this was the area, Charlie, where you were having some issues. And so you've got here, actually, let me go back a step. So the way this works for the others on the call is you come in here essentially and you can it's easier actually over here. So over here is all of your users. So let's say Derek all of a sudden becomes a salesperson. So that's the user profile that I'm accessing. And here, what I have to do is put in the value that would appear on the contact. And in this case, as I told you, we're referencing the salesperson field. And on the salesperson, it would say Derek Bell. And so that's it. That's it. You saw how easy that was. As I explained to you earlier, we also do a number of different campaigns with the Oracle team. And so here you'll see a whole bunch of the Oracle team spread across Australia and New Zealand. And so that one becomes quite dynamic. So we chose to use the contact field to do that. But depending on the size of your organization, you may look at using a custom data object to do that. It really depends. But joining it all together is happening on the campaign canvas. So once you've determined your layout, and once you've created your rule, and you've added the layout to the email sitting within the design editor or the source editor obviously also enables you to do that exact same thing. So here we have the canvas for May and the signature. Now you'll notice here that there are two options. In order to use the rules that I was just showing you, actually, I don't want to deactivate that. But essentially, you'll notice there are two options from a signature point of view. There is to send using a dynamic signature rule. So as soon as you have two or more people, so dynamic groups of people that you want the emails to come from, that's where we then access a rule. However, with the user group, what we do is we send it on behalf of a single user, and that single user is myself. I do jazz it up a little bit, I think, with some of the emails. Yeah. So you can see down here with the email number 3. So email number 3 specifically in this case, first one comes from me. The email number 2 is also from me, but only goes to people who didn't register or did not open the first email. And the email number 3, in fact, goes to people who opened the first email from me, but didn't register. So this one is kind of like, well, Derek's tried to invite you. Now Jason or Marika or Adrian are trying to invite you. And so that one's kind of written in the third person, essentially. So one warning I suppose I'd give you, or not warning, but a caution I would give you is try to avoid using or overusing the signature with the salesperson. For me, I don't really mind. I mean, I'm not, my role is not a salesperson. And yeah, there's no commission structure for me. So I don't mind. What I don't want to do is overdo it. I don't want people to get to a point where they see Jason, Marika, or Adrian's name in their inbox and just assume it's a marketing, it's an event of some sort they're trying to drag me along to necessarily. So think about that as well. Treat that person's name a little bit precious, and use the use the brand for other things. So the brand, from our point of view, the brand will always send you the confirmation email. The brand will send you the reminder emails, those sorts of things. Okay. So I would encourage you not to use the signature across absolutely everything. Let's jump in and have a look at the sales tools. So the sales tools within Eloqua are Profiler and Engage. So they're the two we're going to focus on. Now, of course, there are a few other bits and pieces that can play along with that, but primarily that's what we talk about. When we talk about sales tools, these are the two applications that we're referring to. So the two apps. The Profiler tool enables the sales individual or the service call center. It's not just the sales team. It can also definitely be the service team in the call center to view the digital body language. So it enables them to see very clearly if people have been open in communication. So if they're having to make an outbound call from the call center, they can have a very quick look in Profiler and just get a bit of a gauge as to the level of engagement of that particular individual. So that's always helpful. Then Engage is a tool that enables a salesperson, or again, a person, service person in the call center, to send one email to an individual contact, but to have Eloqua treat it as though it's part of a big campaign. So that means they'll get to see if it was opened, if the people clicked, or if the person clicked on certain links, and all of that information will be visible through Profiler. So they'll be able to see their one email sent to one person as if it was an email sent within a campaign to 1 million people. Exactly the same scenario. They can also send it to a few people. They can take one email and send it to 3 or 4 or 5 or 10, etc. You can actually cap. You can place a limit on the number of recipients an Engage user can send any one email to. So that's helpful. It helps you try and avoid this situation where a salesperson ends up trying to be a little marketing department of their own. So you can have a bit of control over that. If they're looking to log into into Profiler, which is what I'm about to show you here, they can do it from a URL, but the URL is different to the one that you use to log into Eloqua. So even though this first screen here looks the same, the URL is a little bit different, and you'll find all of those URLs in the Help Center. If you just simply search for Accessing Profiler, just Accessing Profiler as a search within the Help Center, you'll find the URLs that you need. So they arrive in looking like so. They have the ability to search for a particular contact. And so here I've searched for Adrian. And so they come up, and then the next screen they see is Profiler on their screen, as you can see. So they get the basic information from a contact point of view, details of the individual, job title, recent or latest activity, opens, clicks, and forms submissions, and then a summary or a breakdown over here on the right-hand side. So they can search for other people from here as well. They've got time frames they can play with here. So I think it's last 60 days, 90 days, and 12 months. They can see across there. One of the other features that's kind of fun is this one here, which is the alert function. So what that enables an individual salesperson or service person to do is to trigger alerts from Oracle directly to them, as in the salesperson, when Adrian hits the website. So if Adrian decides to hit the website and is looking at different things, then Eloqua can immediately trigger a notification email directly to the salesperson to let the salesperson know that their client or prospect is currently spending some time on the website. Always good to know, good information. Now, there are other ways for the salesperson to access the Profiler information. And another way, of course, is on a mobile device. So the accessing Eloqua Profiler on a mobile phone is not an app per se. Again, it's just simply a URL. It's a web page, but of course it's mobile responsive. So again, same sort of scenario. Here's the login screen. From the login screen, they arrive at a search area, as you can see here. And then again, the same sort of construct. You can see obviously the presentation of it is slightly different. But the other tool that we want to look at, of course, is Engage. And so from the Oracle logo, you can tap on the Oracle logo, which will then expose the slide out menu for you, and you can see you've got Profiler and Engage. So Engage then takes the person off to the Engage interface where they're able to build emails that you can see right there. There's a big Compose button where they can pull that all together. They can select from templates. This is just recent. There's an all view as well, or they can search for a template by name. So you as a marketing team control the visibility of which email templates are available to the salesperson or to the engaged user. Okay. All right. So that's a mobile view of the world. This is then on the iPad or a tablet device. Very similar, looks pretty much like the desktop view, I suppose, just a little bit less real estate to play with, but all the same sort of information there. You can see the views here. We can click on preview, etc., and explore that. This is then in the engage view. Now looking at a few more templates. You can see we've clicked on the all button here to expose those. They're all visible. Go ahead and choose those and then build out the email. So this is one of the templates, and you can see different field merges are already dropped in. So there's personalization there. But the engaged user is able to actually come in here and edit, and you can control which parts they can and cannot edit. So you've got control over that as a marketing team. So really great tools, really helpful. I know Jason really likes the Engage tool as an account director. For him, it enables him to grab some on-brand communications and some standard follow-up type communications, but also then gets the visibility of the level of engagement that's happening as well. So if you've got any questions about Engage or how that could work at your organization, if you're not using Profiler and Engage today with your sales or service teams, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to provide some advice or some direction as you consider implementing those, which are these last couple of points that we just want to share now. So the implementation of it really, it's not rocket science at the end of the day. I mean, it's really just a couple of applications. Profiler, for all intents purposes, is really a read-only tool. There's nothing you can't add to it. You can't take away from it. It's really just a read-only. You can click on those alerts and automate those deliveries, but that's kind of about it. But they really do work together as two different tools. Now, for those of you who are using Google Chrome as your standard within your organization, there is actually a little app that you can add from the Google Marketplace or Chrome Marketplace to your browser, which will then enable you to access and sign into Profiler and Engage within that platform. So if that's where your salespeople are really kind of spending their time, if you're a Gmail office and that's what you use, then it probably makes sense for that to probably be built in. It is kind of nice because it does enable the salesperson, as they're doing prospecting and potentially looking at different websites, the tool, the Eloqua sales tool, will pick up the domain that they're looking at, and just to give them a little bit of an indication, do we have any contacts in our database already from that particular domain? So there's a couple of little nice things that can be quite helpful. So again, that's just for Chrome. Then if you're more of an Outlook office, then there's also a plugin or add-in for Microsoft Outlook that enables you to perform pretty much the same functions that I just talked about there. So if, again, instead of the sales team using Outlook and then having to go to a browser to access Profiler and Engage, they can potentially do it all from within Outlook. So now those two products, Profiler and Engage, are licensed products, and you would need to talk to your Oracle account representative to understand the costing for those. It varies around the world, but I know here in Australia, within our region, it's about $270 Australian dollars. What that is in US dollars fluctuates on a daily basis, but it's per user per year. So it's not an outrageous amount of money, and any good marketer would probably push that off to the sales team from a budgeting point of view. If they want it, that's great, but they can pay for it. So I'll leave you to have those internal debates, but two excellent tools for them to think about. Now, from an implementation process, There's a little more to it than this, but essentially the approach we find that works the best is first of all identify a few team members within sales or service who just kind of get the technology. These are people who are probably going to understand the value of having access to this digital information, and being able to see email engagement, being able to see the volume or the pages of the website that an individual has visited. So first of all, identify those people and use them as a pilot group. Okay, get started with them. Start small, and it may well be it's only 3 or 4 or 5 people max potentially, but let them become your champions so that when you potentially roll it out to the wider community of salespeople or service people within maybe another 2 or 3 months, that you've got some champions from within their own team, and it's not again somebody from marketing telling them how amazing this tool is. Let the salespeople tell the salespeople how amazing the tool is. Let them have some success and share that. So in order for you to have emails be visible within the Engage environment, you need to create an email group. So, and you can call it email group whatever you want. We just personally refer to it as Engage. It kind of makes the most sense. You call the Mickey Mouse email group if you wanted to. It didn't really matter. And I'll show you how that works here in a moment. And then just going back to our earlier point, uploading all of those various users is making sure that you upload all of the typical information into the user accounts that you're going to want to merge into your signatures, because you'll probably want to use those signatures in your Engage templates that you're sending out. So for those of you who are administrators or have access to the email group area within Eloqua, so here's just an example of what we've done. So we've created an email group called Engage, probably not the most original name, but that's okay. And then what you need to do in order to expose it within the sales tool, specifically within Engage, you need to tick this box. So make this email group available in Eloqua for sales. So I'm not sure why we don't call it the same thing, but anyway, Eloqua for sales is Engage. Same thing. Okay, so that's how you control what becomes visible within Eloqua, within Engage. I'm sorry. We wanted to give you a hack this month, and this one came from a bunch of clients who have an offsite team. So they're sort of global center for excellence. And that team is based offshore, and the marketers are based here in Australia. And when it comes to running events, the team just don't seem to be able to get their stuff together. And by that, I mean, they'll come up with the invitation email and a confirmation email, and they'll send that off to the offshore team. So then the offshore team are like, well, what about the second invitation? And what about the other reminders? Not ready. So then the offshore team are then building out a canvas with like one email on it. Then they're having to extract a segment again, work out who opened, who didn't, who's registered, who's not, etc. Absolutely crazy, and a waste of everybody's time. So what we've done, we've had a little think about a smarter way to do it, because unfortunately, the team here in Sydney are not going to change their behaviour. So we came up with a better way to do it. So let me show you. And look, some of you may or may not be aware of this, but this is a great little function of the campaign canvas. So if you have, for example, a segment, you've got an email, and this is the invitation potentially to your event, and you may well have a wait step there, and you may have other things happening. But what you don't have yet are the emails for the second round. So you want to send off another set of email to people who have not yet registered, for example. So what you can do is use the move to campaign function. So move to campaign means that we can automatically take everybody from this canvas that's flowing down through this process and move them to a second canvas. Now, that second canvas doesn't have to be active, by the way. It can just be a placeholder. I probably should have prepared one earlier, but I didn't. So I'm just going to jump in here. So what happens is the canvas will appear in front of you. This one's from 2017. Here we go. Yeah. And so even if the campaign is in draft, which it usually is, that's fine. You just identify where where on the second canvas you want those people to be sent to, and that's it. You're done. So and then it says move to campaign. It gives you the name of the campaign and then the name of the step, which is a wait step in this case, that the people have moved to. So the second canvas only has to have a single element on it, and it could just be potentially a wait step, and that's it. Okay, so that's just one fun little tip. Okay, so Emily asked the question, is HTML required to create responsive layouts? Now, that may be referring to the signature layouts. So if you wanted to get a little bit fancy schmancy like we did with the photograph on the left and the copy on the right, then yes, that little bit of HTML expertise is needed in that instance. However, if you're wanting to do a strictly text-based signature layout, which is really just a bunch of field merges that you're dropping in, then that's absolutely responsive, and you won't have any troubles with that at all. Okay, let's have a look at 22B and quickly give you a wrap up. So there are a few things happening with 22B that we thought were of interest that we just wanted to share. First one is a new metric. So those of you who have been around a while will know that in February, we all had access to a new metric called Auto Open, which is in direct result to the Apple privacy policy changes that sort of kicked in around September last year. So the email open is available now, but auto click is coming as well. So the auto click is sometimes generated by these scanning or privacy tools. Some larger organizations will have all sorts of security, obviously, at the server level. And long before the email even reaches your inbox, the IT team and their security software have been scanning and clicking, etc., to ensure the safety of those particular emails as they come through. And though the clicking performed by those tools can send back false information to platforms like Eloqua and others. It's not an Eloqua issue, it's an industry issue, so to speak, but we're able to be a little bit smarter now and get some reporting to be able to show the difference between these two things. So the key thing that everyone's going to want to know is kind of when, and that is that auto-click metrics will only start being captured after release 22B. So for most people on this call, you probably will not yet be on release 22B, but you will be within the next week or 2 weeks, or max 3 weeks. I think it's certainly by the end of this month, being May. Okay, so one thing to look out for and see that coming. The other one is more for the administrators, just for you to be aware that the Oracle CX apps for Eloqua are now scheduled on monthly maintenance. This used to be quarterly, but offset from the standard platform releases. Now monthly, and the nice thing is no downtime from the platform, as in Eloqua, no downtime. So that's good news. So it's more of an FYI really than anything else. This is a change to the sales tools engaged. Now, you recall I said to you earlier that what you can do as the administrator is limit the number of recipients that an engaged user can send. So if you don't want your salespeople being able to send one engage email to 2,000 people, then you can create a limit. Now, a very sensible limit seems to be around the vicinity of 40 or 50 kind of max. Even for some, that's way too many, and I've seen some clients reduce it down to 10 or 15. What this is talking about, though, is limiting the number of sales emails that a rep can send to the same contact over a period of time. So what we're trying to do here is stop a sales or engage a user from emailing the same person every single day for 6 months. Okay, whatever rule that you kind of create. So with 22B, you'll be able to create some rules and controls around that as well. So that's good news. Then the last one, and again, probably more so for the administrators in amongst the team, is automated certificate management. So this relates specifically to SSL certificates and other types of similar types of certificates within the platform, but predominantly we all know that we've had to go to HTTPS and get those SSL certificates so that things display properly and people don't get warnings in their browsers, et cetera, et cetera. So pod 6 and 7, so pod 7 is actually based in Australia, in Sydney. Pod 6, I've actually forgotten where pod 6 is. So these two pods are going first, and this new functionality is available as of release 22B. And so pod 7 has actually already gone to 22B. That was the first one this time. Other pods will follow, as you see there. And so this will be good because it's all about automating the renewal process. So there's no chance of people forgetting or not seeing emails, and then all of a sudden everyone's going into a flat spin because Eloqua landing pages aren't displaying and images aren't showing up, and so on and so forth. So the automation of that process will be a lot nicer for everybody involved. All righty. Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our session today. Happy to stay on the line if there are any questions arising out of any of those things. Thank you specifically to Emily and to Shelley for those questions. What I will do is maybe reach out to you via email, Shelley, just in relation to that upload scenario to see if you have any luck with that. And if not, we'll see if we can help you find a solution to fix that. But yeah, happy to stay on the line here if there are any other questions. But again, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your help and your support. And we look forward to seeing you next month. We'll have some details out to you shortly for our for our June session of the Eloqua user group. Have a wonderful day, and we'll chat soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.